Hi, in this module, we're going to be talking about the evolution of the models for buying and selling online ads, and again, largely focusing on display, video, and native ads. And today, starting with the direct selling method, and then getting into the rise of ad networks. I'm going to be using really round numbers in terms of the years when the buying methods were in vogue. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm going to be significantly simplifying the flow. The reason that I'm going through in this order is largely to introduce some of the key concepts in a logical order. All right, let's get going. Unsurprisingly, the model for the early internet followed the model of TV buying. And the agencies would try to buy from the largest web properties, and they tended to be the portals at the time: Yahoo, AOL, and MSN. The agency or the advertiser would literally call up the publisher or maybe email and discuss running their ads on some properties, and then would likely email over the creative assets. There were a lot of disadvantages to this model. If you're a publisher and your own sales team hadn't sold enough ads on your property, then you were in a position where you wouldn't make money. You would either run a house ad for your own product, or you just serve a blank white space. If you were an agency and you had to deal with each of the publishers separately, they may have used different technologies or standards, or you may see different performance across the publishers, so you needed to manage your campaign. It is this last point that prompted the rise of the ad networks. When we talk about ad networks, we really have to start with advertising.com that was founded in 1998. The model that ad.com was trying to implement was that they would buy from all of the publishers, not just the major portals, and they would manage the advertiser campaigns so that they saw the best performance, which was usually measured on a click-through rate basis. From a publisher perspective, this was both a potential opportunity and a threat. The reason that it was an opportunity was that it was another potential way of making money outside of the direct effort of their own sales teams. The reason that it was a challenge was that there were other people selling your inventory if you were a publisher, and this created sales channel conflict. In other words, if I'm the Yahoo sales force, I don't like the fact that somebody else is saying, I can sell you the Yahoo homepage. Indeed, up until about 2015, Yahoo didn't allow ad networks onto their homepage. The other things that publishers didn't like was that they could no longer see all the ads before they ran on their properties, and this led to the perception that ad networks were low quality. So publishers adopted different techniques to protect their sales force and exert control while still getting money from ad networks. The most common technique was to only allow the ad networks to run when the publisher direct sold had no demand. This led to the ad networks being run at a status called remnant, meaning leftover inventory. The whole prioritization technique is generally referred to as the waterfall model. I'm not going to get into the technology today. I really just want to stay at the level of the model. And another key point is the flow of money. And the rise of the ad network is the first example of intermediaries inserting themselves into this money flow. Some would argue that agencies themselves are intermediaries since they are acting on behalf of the advertiser, but I'm going to set that aside for the time being. Let's look at the dollar flow. In the example of the advertiser interacting directly with the publisher, let's say they're spending $100,000, and that $100,000 goes directly to the publisher. Maybe the publisher has expenses associated with it and it has to pay sales commissions, but there's no loss in the value from the advertiser over to the publisher side of this flow. Now, let's assume that the advertiser is giving the $100,000 to ad.com. The first thing to note is that ad.com will keep some of the money to cover their costs. This is just an illustrative example, but let's assume that it keeps $20,000. The other thing to note is that the amount of money that goes to the publishers will be determined by both the buying algorithms of ad.com technology and the availability of ad space on each of the different publishers. The reason that the advertiser is willing to give up some of the money that would otherwise be spent on the ads is they expect that the performance improvement is more than offset by the margin that ad.com is taking. In the same way that some of the challenges with the direct model led to the rise of ad networks, some of the challenges with this model led to the rise of ad exchanges, DSPs, and SSPs, which I'll talk about in the next model.